Neil, that must give you a little element in the back of your mind, maybe hoping the Lions series is postponed to later in the year, which there has been talk so that maybe you can get guys like Kwagga and Cheslin involved.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't want to say it, but yes, there is a bit of hope for that to happen. And if it happens like that, again, it will be brilliant to have those two top players in the system. I think guys that's been part of the system, they understand the game, and I think just what they bring in terms of their professionalism and how they play the game and how they almost motivate people around them to play the same way. It's brilliant. So yeah, let's hope and see. Maybe it still works out for us and for the Springboks. But it's obviously more us that's going to be affected when those two tournaments are on the same time.
Yeah. Neil, just looking at kind of where you guys were at the point where the season was halted, I mean, how were you feeling at that point? Obviously, New Zealand had shown great form, but you guys had maybe even gone above some expectations. I mean, what were your goals for the season? I mean, as you mentioned, the one before, you wanted to make sure you were in that top four. What were your thoughts about where you wanted to finish the regular World Series? You were second at the point of suspension of play. What were the kind of goals that you had set out for this season? And as we mentioned, obviously in the back of your minds was the Olympics.
Yeah, sure, Greg. I think it's always a difficult thing when you're in Olympic year, because I think everything you do, you build up to the Olympics. So I think that's also why we almost wanted to rest some of the players in LA and Vancouver. So I won't say we surrendered points, or we knew that we're not going to do well in Los Angeles, Vancouver. We almost felt like bringing new guys in that's got that hunger to show that they can also play at that level is maybe a good thing, rather than to have somebody like Justin play 6 tournaments in a row or 8 tournaments in a row. It is difficult, especially when you get to January and you're like 2.5 weeks away, and then you get back at home. The first week you recover from jet lag, then you have a week and a half of training and you're back on a plane. It makes it difficult. And I think just looking at the season, we knew that we going to change the team quite often to test combinations and see how different players play together to make sure we get the right combinations going into the Olympics. And I think that's what we said. We'll basically use the first 6 tournaments of the World Series to test those combinations, give guys opportunities to put their hands up, and then use the last 4 tournaments, especially Hong Kong and Singapore, which is basically the same climate and weather conditions that you will get in Japan, and to use that as our dress rehearsal for the Olympics. We even said, because we haven't won Hong Kong, to maybe try and put pressure on the players and go, guys, this is a must win, to try and simulate that pressure that they will get in the Olympics in Japan. So yeah, it's I think, and then using that last 4 tournaments to actually just prepare and build up for the Olympics then in July.
Sure. And then Neil, just looking at just your thought process. I mean, obviously you were planning things as well as you have been. Then the season's suspended. Olympics is postponed. What are just your reactions to those sort of things? And as you said, maybe at the beginning there was hope that it would just be a short little break, but I mean, by its nature, the 7 series goes all over the world, so it makes it very difficult to ever get that resumption going. I mean, how was your feeling and emotions as the break was extended, and then competitions were cancelled and postponed?
Yeah, I think obviously the Olympics was a disappointment for the reasons that I already mentioned. We felt like we were on a good wicket. We've planned well for the Olympics, and then we were still, when they cancelled the Olympics, we were still hoping to play that last 4 tournaments, the Paris, London, Hong Kong, Singapore tournaments, because we felt like yes, we had a disappointment in Hamilton where we didn't play well, and we finished, I don't think 10th or 11th or something like that in that Hamilton tournament. But it almost felt like then we slowly started to build our momentum again with the players that we had available, because we made about 7 or 8 changes from the team that played in Cape Town to the team that played in Hamilton. So it was almost a case of the guys trying to find each other still out there on the field. Then we finished in the final in Sydney the weekend after that. And then went home 2.5 weeks, then went to Los Angeles, won that tournament, and then came fourth in Vancouver, which was also a bit of a disappointment, losing to New Zealand in the semis and then losing to Canada in the third and fourth place playoff. So, but I felt like we started to get some momentum, and would have then, with the Olympics being cancelled, we almost shifted our focus then to the World Series in that last four and going, guys, let's see if we can win this World Series. And then got the news about 2 weeks ago that that those tournaments are also cancelled and that the season is done and New Zealand is the winners of the World Series. But also knowing Clark Laidlaw and the New Zealanders, and that's basically his first World Series win, I think he definitely wouldn't have liked to win the World Series in that way. He would have loved to play the whole season and then be crowned the World Series champion. But yeah, I think just thinking about it, they definitely were the most consistent team over those first 6 tournaments. So deserved the World Series champions.
Yeah. Neil, just a final couple of questions. But I mean, obviously in sevens, and I think you've mentioned before, I mean, a year can actually be a long time for a sevens player, just in terms of, especially the guys getting a little bit older, and we've seen obviously Cecil Afrika that the plans for him have changed. Just chat firstly about maybe how things have had to shift slightly in terms of players you may have been considering using, and that maybe now things have changed, and just a tribute to Cecil. And I mean, a lot of players have said he was such a trailblazer in the seven setup, and especially for the Springbok sevens, just what made him so special. And I think he inspired a lot of young guys coming through.
Yeah, listen, it's unfortunate that that things happen like they happen now, and I would have loved to at least give Cecil opportunity to get himself in that Olympic team and then finish his career on a high with the Olympics. But I think for a lot of the teams, they had those senior players that were still good enough for maybe 1 or 2 seasons, but at some stage you need to call it. It happened with me, it happened with Marius Koeman, it happened with Frankie Horn, Carl Brown. Frankie also finished the year the Olympics and he didn't make the Olympics, and he was one of the great players in sevens, where he played 68 tournaments or consecutively without missing one, and then miss out on the Olympics. So I think from a coaching side and from a public side, you would always wish those players could be in that last tournament where they perform well and they finish their career on a high. But again, I think I mention it to the players all the time. Life's not always a fairy tale. It doesn't always happens like you imagine it in your head. And even with tournaments as well, I think at one stage, was it last season, where we did badly in Las Vegas, then we won Vancouver, and then we did badly again in Hong Kong, and then we won Singapore. And then in England happened the same. We did not badly in England, but London we played fairly okay, but I think we finished 5th or something. And then we had Paris, and I said to the guys, life's not a fairy tale. It's not just going to happen again. It's not just, you can't just pitch up in Paris and you're going to win the tournament again because you didn't do well the previous tournament. And again, I think for the individuals as well. But it's always tough. Would have loved to give Cecil another season, but we also need to make sure that we develop the next generation of players. And if we keep Cecil in the system, we keep giving opportunities, then we obviously take away game time from a guy like Kurt Lee or the next youngster that we want to bring through. So it's always a difficult thing. But in terms of Cecil and what he brought to this game, I think Cecil is probably the only genuine playmaker we had in the Springbok 7 setup ever. I think if you think of Justin and you think of a Roscoe and you think of a Branko, they're X-factor players. They create opportunities for themselves. But Cecil was one of those guys that created opportunities for everybody else around him. And if you go look at his ball carries into contact for a whole tournament, he will maybe have 1 or 2. He never goes into contact with the ball. He always gets to get rid of that ball before he gets to contact, but it's always a good get rid of the ball, not kicking the ball away or just getting rid of the ball type of thing, but he actually puts somebody into space next to him. He's one of those guys that plays the game one step ahead in his head. He think of what he want to do next, what's his outcome, where he want to go. And before he gets that ball in his hands, he knows exactly what he wants to do. He's such a brilliant reader of the game, and he's definitely a student of the game. He often, in team meetings, when the meeting is done, he'll come to me and he said, listen, I had a look at England. They are doing this. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to then do that against them. So he was thinking about the game, and you don't get it with a lot of players, but I think it's because of his playmaking ability that he was so eager to learn more about the game, so that when he gets onto that field, before he gets that ball and he's in a certain situation, he knows exactly what he wants to do. But yeah, yeah, amazing guy. I played with him, I coached him. A fantastic guy, a great team guy, always in good spirit. And I think the amazing thing about him is how he works with the youngsters as well, and how he helps them to be better, not just in a technical way, but also in a mental toughness way and in a work ethic way. Is an all-round good player. You will always think those playmakers can attack, but they can't defend. Cecil for his size, is a great defender, and he can hold his own in the contact areas of the game. So yeah, definitely a legend of the game, and probably the only playmaker, genuine playmaker that we ever had in this 17.
100%. Neil, just a final question, and as we start looking a little bit further ahead, just tell me about how do you refocus now, or kickstart all those preparations again for a new season and the Olympics. Tell me about the guys, the youngsters that you've been impressed by, that you're quite excited to see what they can bring as you build towards that Olympics and get that squad going again. And as we chatted before recording, just about when hopefully you can start your training again. And I'm sure conditioning is going to be brutal for the guys after a bit of a period where they haven't been able to do everything as usual.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be difficult to get the guys focused. I think everybody is now so eager and hungry to get back onto the field. And I even made a joke with Shakes the other day when I saw him. He's like, yes, the guys are keen to get back. I'm like, it's okay. You guys can go back. I'm still happy with my sabbatical and spending time with the family. So, yeah, so the guys are really eager. And I think if you get that hunger again, they're not difficult to motivate and focus the guys. I think they still know that there's a big tournament at the end of the World Series in July next year, and that's the Olympics. And I think what this actually gave us is it gives us a second chance to try and perfect that preparation going to the Olympics. So obviously we made some mistakes in this first 6 tournaments, and from a management side, playing side, technical side, and it's all the things that we can now fix going into this next tournament to make sure that we hopefully will get in a good state when we get to the Olympics. But yeah, I think we're really hoping that we could have started on Monday, the 6th of July, but unfortunately haven't got the green light from the government yet. So I think what we are targeting as a 7th system is to try and start early August. So hopefully by then we get some good news from the government so that we can start training again. And then basically I have to work not so much on the fitness maybe, but a little bit more on the strength, because I think from a fitness side, the guys were able to get out, go run, do cycling. But from a strength side, there's no gyms open, and some of the guys didn't really have equipment with them. Some got bands, but it's not really weights, or some used 5-liter water bottles as their weights. So it's maybe good for 2 weeks, but then you need to get back into the gym and use the real weights. So I think it's probably something that we will definitely focus on for that first at least 4 to 6 weeks, to make sure that we get the guys back to their normal strength before we go onto the field and get into the contact zone or contact training sessions. But yeah, I think it's going to be again an interesting season. I think the dynamics probably changed a little bit because of a guy like Cecil that's now not contracted. Werner already committed to go to the Sharks after the 2020 Olympics, July 2020. So he's gone. So there's definitely going to be new guys coming through. And I think some of the guys already showed their potential, but they haven't showed their full potential. A guy like Curtly Aaron showed glimpses of what he's capable of. And I think I'm so excited to see him this season. I think he's going to be brilliant. I think he's slowly starting to get his confidence and understand his role and responsibilities with inside the team. A guy like Angelo Davids, I mean, he's also showed his capability over the last season or two, and haven't had this full opportunity to prove himself yet. But I think he's definitely getting there. And then a guy like Stedman as well. Stedman showed some glimpses this year of what he's capable of. I think he had a new role this season of captaincy, the captain of the side. So it's always putting a little bit more pressure on you when you captain a side. And it was interesting to see how he grew in this whole process of captaining the side as well in the absence of Shaky. So happy with where he is. one or two guys that I feel can make a massive step up. Impy was good when he got opportunities this season, so really looking forward to him. JC, I think, can still develop. I think he's sitting at 80% of his potential, but he can still give us 20% more. So there's quite a few youngsters that's coming through. A guy like that haven't had his opportunity this year, Ronald Brown. We're very excited about him as well. I think he showed a lot of promise in our training sessions. So I think if this season was a normal season and we rested some of the players in Los Angeles and Vancouver, he probably would have gotten his opportunity in that Los Angeles Vancouver tournament. But unfortunately now we knew about the 4 tournaments that's going to be postponed to September and October before we went to Los Angeles. So we decided to take a full strength team to Los Angeles and Vancouver, because then there was a big enough break for the guys to rest before we go to Paris, London, and Hong Kong, Singapore. But yes, I think he's also one of the guys that can come through nicely in the next season. And then Tiaan Pretorius, a youngster that was still in school last year in Paul Roos. He's the cousin of Kwagga Smith. So Kwagga's mum and Tiaan's father is his brother and sister, and his father also played a little bit for the Lions, Toros Pretorius. So he does have a bit of rugby genes in him. So yeah, I think he's definitely somebody that can also not maybe make it to the Olympics, but will be good for us post Olympics if some of the senior players leave after the Olympics. Yeah, so yeah, very excited. I think there's quite a few youngsters coming through, and really looking forward to the season. I think it's going to be a big one again with the Olympics as the carrot at the end.
For sure. Neil, well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And keep enjoying your sabbatical, and hopefully we'll see you guys out there again soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's so chat.
Final strike.